Cool. Well, thanks everyone, and thanks Jeff for inviting us to speak. We did actually want to be there with you in person, but we only landed from Copenhagen this morning and then had meetings all day here in London, so we couldn't actually get over to you, unfortunately. But thanks for having us, regardless. So what we're going to talk to you about today is give you a little bit of insight into us, Grounded, but also kind of what grounded is and what grounded means. And it's really all about purpose, and it's how we think about and work with purpose as a brand building mechanism or a brand building tool, let's say, to help brands deliver on their purpose and achieve sustainable impact. So grounded, the way that we talk about grounded, we're really a social, we're really a social innovation consultancy. Basically, and born out of many years working in kind of advertising and brand activation, but specifically a lot of work with Unilever across North America. So Heidi and I, and Heidi will talk bits, so you don't have to just listen to me crone on. But Heidi and I used to lead a team that ran all of the marketing for Unilever across North America, specifically across brand activation, shopper and retail, and increasingly a lot in e-commerce and digital too. And as part of that engagement, it was our responsibility to work with lots of different agencies across the WPP network, bring them all together into one place. So we operated as one big kind of mega agency, I guess you could say, even though they're all called something a little bit different. And then more overtly, think about how we could help rally all that resource and all that capability to help Unilever deliver against Unilever's Sustainable Living Plan, which some of you may have heard of, but is probably the industry benchmark for how a big CPG organization like Unilever can prove out that it can deliver sustainable impact over a long period of time all over the world. So they hold themselves to some very high standards, which meant that as a result, we were expected to kind of be equally accountable for how we went about marketing and how we thought about delivering impact in all the communities around the world that they serve, basically. So that's a very long-winded way of saying that as a result of all that, we decided that we'd actually set up our own consultancy practice to do nothing but that and actually advise brands on how to embrace their purpose, or if they didn't have a purpose, define what their purpose actually is all about, and then use that purpose as a means to kind of bring their brand to life, engage new stakeholders, engage new audiences, but more so than anything else, leave a lasting positive impact on the world. And as a result of that ambition, which is pretty broad and pretty scary, we realized that the traditional agency model probably wasn't going to work, because agencies are usually good at one or two things. They recruit people to be good at one of those two things. But what we're talking about requires a lot of expertise from lots of different disciplines and lots of different industries and sectors, all converging and working in collaboration and partnership together. So we needed a different model. We couldn't rely on the standard agency model. We needed to operate a little bit differently. So that's why here on the screen you can say that, you know, we are flexible, fluid, and fearless. So we'll basically throw ourselves at anything pretty much. Just as long as there's purpose at the core. But to enable us to do that, we need to be flexible and fluid. So that means that we need to be able to work with lots of different stakeholders and collaborators and partners from all walks of life, all at the same time, and configure them in lots of different ways around the problem to make sure that we get just the right kind of solution coming out the back end. So that's why we work with CEOs and strategists and academics and investors and creatives and producers and philanthropists and activists, and Heidi, to convene just the right configuration around that problem. And what those solutions end up looking like really at the back end, they tend to be kind of brand experience in terms of either big communication platforms or pop-ups or events, or I don't know, whatever it might be. Through to commercial innovation, which is actually helping brands or businesses define their value proposition, what business they're in, help them with their product and innovation strategy, and then all the way through to then, okay, so what can we do to create an ecosystem around that business to make sure that they're actually going to deliver social impact. So I guess you could say it's a non-traditional consultancy, which kind of bridges the space between traditional advertising, brand experience, digital PR, and probably management consultancy as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good description. I didn't know if you wanted to show them that little slide.
What little slide's that?
That one.
Do you want to talk to that?
Sure, I'll talk to that one.
Talk to that one.
So just to further credentialize a little bit, so beyond the Unilever roster that Phil mentioned, not only do we believe that this is important, that brands and businesses find their purpose and have a sense of, I'll say, agenda that's better for the world beyond just the pocketbook, but other groups think so too. And so we were recognized within Real Leaders, which is a publication that's aligned with the United Nations to identify 100 visionary leaders. We squeaked by at number 89, but we made it in the list, which is quite cool considering Emma Watson and Oprah Winfrey and Richard Branson are in our company. But I also think it does a great job of underscoring how important this vision is, not just to us, but ultimately to the world, because if business doesn't get behind making the world a bit better, as well as driving good profits, it's left too much to the nonprofit industry or market, and it probably won't go anywhere. Plus, you had a really fun quote in here.
Oh yeah, here's my quote of the century. Right, you ready for this, guys? You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Innovation is the new marketing. Activism is the new sex. Look at that.
There you have it.
Boom.
Boom.
But really, the thought behind that was that it's what you do, not what you say, that actually makes the difference these days. And that activism is what's actually being used, I guess you could say, cynically, to be the thing that's going to appeal and engage people, as you know, sex once did. So still does, arguably, possibly. So if you can kind of bring those two things together, then you're in a really good space, and you're kind of creating a new currency, new language, a new way of engaging with brands, basically.
Yeah.
So that then led to our purpose, basically, how we articulate what we do. So quite simply, we exist to harness the power of creativity through partnership by bringing all those people and stakeholders, partners together around the problem. And by doing that, if we do it in a fluid and flexible and fearless way, so that's lots of hackathons and that's lots of brainstorms and think tanks and flying all over the world doing crazy stuff. But if we can kind of do that, then we can actually create real value by doing some good. So the fundamental principle is that, you know, you can make money and you can be a good citizen. The two aren't mutually exclusive. And in fact, the best businesses and the best brands in the world today do that as part of their DNA. They, you know, that they do that automatically without thinking about it. But I think it's fair to say, in the absence of any strong direction from government, not to mention any names, brands and businesses are having to step up and actually take that mantle and carry the load and demonstrate that we can actually make a social and tangible impact in the world.
So, Phil, that all sounds well and good, but how do you do that?
I'm so glad you asked. So how do we go about doing that? So I think the core, and kind of we'll lift the hood a little bit for you today. The core of our methodology and process, and where we start right at the beginning, is actually making sure that whoever we're working with either understands what their purpose is and can articulate it very clearly, or if they don't, we employ this tool and methodology in cooperation with them to help them define it and express it. And the notion here is that, you know, I guess the old or traditional idea of brand positioning just doesn't really work anymore. Mainly because it's built out of consumers' apparent accepted beliefs or usage and attitudes, and of course they're all captured in the same way using the same research methodologies by the same agencies who employ the same people who have just moved from one agency to the next over their careers. So what that basically means is you get a massive echo chamber. To put another way, you get the same shit feeding back day after day, time after time, with very, very little differentiation and originality, and dare I say authenticity. So over time, that contributes, I think, to what we can all probably agree means that, you know, to some extent today, brand marketing, communications and advertising, certainly at a big corporate level at mass and scale, is pretty generic, it's pretty homogenous, And it's pretty boring, isn't it? Let's face it. So if you want to start from somewhere different and you actually really want to kind of make a difference in the world, you have to be clear on what's driving you right from the outset. And that's really down to your sense of purpose or belief. So
I think you have a fun little video next.
I don't know if this video will work, but let's try.
Okay.
I have to press play.
Sound off my computer. Play that here.
Can you hear that, guys? No. Okay. Let's leave that one off then. So that was a little video from Rick and Morty. You may have seen it, where he invents a robot whose purpose is to basically serve butter. So I think really the kind of point behind all that was that actually, if you look at today, and if you look at kind of how we've evolved, right at the top of that pyramid, it's very Maslow's hierarchy of needs like. But we've moved from the transformation economy, the experience economy, to the transformation economy in internet things and digital and on demand, through to what we're now calling, or these guys from the Foresight Group are calling, the meaningful economy. And that's based on hard data and facts. One here on the right-hand side, that 93% of consumers today demand that brands be purpose-led or values-driven. And that's from a recent survey from PSFK. So I think we all intuitively know this. We all intuitively feel this. We probably don't necessarily always see great examples of this actually being executed or delivered. However, as obviously the big recent Nike scandal with Köpenick demonstrated, that if it's done, and it's done with boldness and done well, it can actually leave a really big lasting impression and can actually influence and change culture. So the new conscious consumer, they feel a sense of ownership. They want inclusion and personalization. They want products that are going to make a mark without leaving one. They want to seek brands that act in their best interests. And they actually want to participate with brands that have platforms that enable and empower them themselves to create change. It's not a one-way dialogue anymore. It's not about, A talking to B. It's about B engaging and communicating and constantly interacting with A to create C, which is altogether something bigger and different and more rewarding for both parties. So that's not easy to communicate and orchestrate, but that's ultimately how we need to think today, I think, as communications professionals. So that means then, for the business level, it's from optimal profitability to sustainable profitability. It's about competitive spirit and trying to outdo the competition, to operating more in a collaborative way, and building an ecosystem around yourself that includes lots of different partners from lots of different industries to help you achieve the objectives. And then it's from just shareholder values and delivering the bottom line to shared values that everyone feels they can buy into and understand. And I think there's 3 steps to delivering against that, really, that needs to underpin everything that a brand or a business does. First, you've got to build trust with the human approach, tell human stories, be authentic, be empathetic, and make sure that you're putting humanity at the forefront. Next, cultivate that ecosystem to create added value. So by ecosystem, I don't mean traditional communications planning where you're thinking about how many likes or I don't know, how many GPRs you're going to get when you pump some TV down the tube. This is about thinking about businesses, people, activists, brands, non-profits, investors, anyone or everybody that's involved with helping that brand communicate and deliver its purpose needs to be a vital constituent part of that ecosystem. So communication planning these days, I believe, is more about orchestration and about using those natural assets and equities that are owned and inherently part of all the partners that you bring together in a very organic and natural way, but making sure you've got a core idea and a script, if you like, at the core of it, so everyone knows what they're talking about. They have a common purpose and a common sense of direction, but they can pretty much be left up to their own devices in terms of how they bring that to life and how they execute. So it's a very different model to traditional brand planning and brand building. And then third, but by no means least, is empower audiences to do more. So that's about enlisting consumers to be part of the solution, engage them in the communication so they become active participants in whatever the brand is attempting to achieve and however it's attempting to express its purpose. So it's lofty stuff, and it's pretty disruptive. I think you probably agree. I think this is the way that the world is moving, and certainly based on our observation and our reason for forming Grounded, really, in terms of how we think we can deliver against all of these different pillars. So, if that's the context, and we hold that to be true,
self-evident.
Self-evident. Yes. Thank you. That's the phrase I was looking for. Then, how do we go about cracking it? So we have a very simple model that we use, and it's a new model for defining your brand positioning. Really, it's a few evolutions on from the old traditional brand pyramid or brand onion or brand key or whatever it is that we were using 10, 15 years ago, to something which is far more comprehensive and far more focused on human belief, purpose, and how that can be pulled right down through the organization, from innovation to supply chain to production to culture to organizational design, all the way out then to kind of marketing, communications, and brand expression. We call it the BPP, and very simply it stands for brand belief, brand purpose, and brand pursuits. So here's how it works. So we start off by articulating the brand belief. And we've got some examples of this a little bit later, so we'll show you how this can be brought to life. But this is really a very simple articulation of what we or the brand or sometimes the founder or the individual believes about the world. And it's usually, and it always works if it is, a single-minded, profoundly human belief that the brand has about the world. And that belief is important because that's the belief that then anchors the brand's ambition and its purpose, and it actually provides the inspiration for that purpose. So going back to that first pillar we talked about needing a human, putting humanity at the front, unless you have a core belief that's going to engage and motivate people, you really haven't got a lot. And as you know, beliefs drive us, they drive our psychology, they underpin narrative, they drive mythology. Beliefs are basically what glue society together into a cohesive state and an operating organism, basically. So if you don't have a belief, you don't have a lot, actually. So that's where we start with, and we'll show you some examples in a second of how that belief can be clearly articulated. Once you've articulated that belief, then it comes onto the purpose. So if that's what we believe, then therefore this is what we exist to do. So it's almost what's the word? An answer to that belief. And the purpose needs to operate on a very high level, because what it really is about is expressing then how the brand will affect culture, how it can serve people, or how it can actually change the world for better in some way. And a good purpose, if it's well expressed, is a little bit more than just an external brand positioning, which is about measuring up against your key competition. Actually, a good purpose helps a brand, business, or organization go to market in lots of different ways, and it constantly inspires new thinking. So actually, a good brand purpose is the basis for building not just your communications, your brand around, but your entire organization, actually, if it's good and it's well expressed. So ultimately, that's what we aim to do, actually, is define a very clear purpose that galvanizes every part of the business and organization together. And then last but by no means least, the way that the belief and the purpose are then supported is through three pillars. And we define those three pillars as, okay, so what's your product? So what is it you're producing, and why is it different, and why is it better? What's the platform that you're going to use to kind of distribute that product and engage people around that product proposition or that promise? And by platform, that could be a content platform, but it could be a digital platform. It could be a social community platform. It could be anything, but it's a means in which you're going to then be able to get that product out to a community and make sure they're actively engaged around it. And then the third pillar then is the impact. So what's the social outcome that you're actually ideally wanting to have? What's the difference you want to make on the world? And ultimately, how is that going to be sustainable? So they're the three pursuits. And that's basically kind of where we start. So I'll show you a few examples. In fact, Heidi, do you want to talk?
Want me to do this?
Yeah,
one?
do you want to talk to this?
Yes.
Yeah.
because I'm curious if we have any fashion lovers in the room. I'm looking around and I'm seeing lots of sweatshirts and jeans, but we can all aspire for a little Victoria's
me
Secret.
included. Look at me, I look a mess.
Both look a mess.
Look in the mirror today.
All right, so this brand is called Emerging Heroes, and I'll tell you a bit about the founder because it's a pretty interesting story. But first, let's talk about the mission. So let's say this poor lass has been eaten up and spit out by the world of fashion. She worked in the business for quite some time. You might recognize her in a moment. And ultimately, what she wanted to do is start to leverage fashion as a mechanism in how women could feel a bit more swagger about themselves, but also start to broadcast what was important to them, every woman's individual purpose of it. So she came to us and said, so here's kind of what I'm thinking. What do you want? How should we do this, and how would we frame up this business? And so the woman that came to us, her name's Heather Payne. And as her name might suggest, she has been through a bit of pain as a Victoria's Secret model. So she had wings on her back and, God knows what else stuck up her butt, the poor thing. But the, just thinking of underwear.
Oh, okay.
Underwear.
Fine. Good.
All right. So Heather decided she wanted to create a fashion line that was more empowering rather than being strutting, if you will. So she retired by age 25. No, I'm kidding. A little bit older than that, and wanted to start on her own fashion business. So pulling from her history through a lot of interviews and talking about her ambition, we boiled down her BBP to this page. Ultimately, we started with what she believes about the world. And so with all that she'd seen in the world of fashion and, behind the runway at Victoria's Secret, she really came to believe that adversity is something that gives us strength, but being vulnerable makes us beautiful. So it's the journey, it's all of the life experiences, it's all the things she's overcome that makes her beautiful. It's not just her blonde hair and her perfect shape, but it's all of those bumps and bruises and scratches throughout her life that have actually inspired her to strength and vulnerability as her form of beauty. So therefore, what does she exist to do? Well, she wants to inspire young women to reveal their inner hero through fashion. So not just make fashion something you strut around with down, Times Square, but actually something that can actually support and embrace your own inner sense of self and your own inner hero. So a really compelling mission. And so, like Phil said, we boiled these down into 3 simple pursuits. A wise man once told me, you can never remember more things than you have on fingers on one hand. So I'm sure Jeff will use that as informative for your next test. So AKA no more than 5 things. So we boiled it down to her 3 pursuits. The first one being stylish. So she wanted to make sure that this collection of clothes, and specifically leggings, it could be worn anytime, that they had exceptional quality and fit, but were a bit aspirational. They have a bit of a higher end appeal to them. They can be worn certainly as an activewear, but something very stylish with a jacket, etc. She wanted to create a fashion line that was dynamic. So if you are going to learn through your experiences, you're not going to stay still. So she needed to create a flexible format that allowed artists and designers, as well as women themselves, to customize designs every time they wore a new pair. And then the last part was about being incorruptible. It was very important to her that this business championed inclusion and equality and social impact through its core, all the way down to how the products and the materials were sourced. She wanted a clean supply chain as well that was completely incorruptible. So this became her BBP. So at the top, like Phil mentioned, you're seeing the belief. You're seeing how that belief informed her purpose, her company's purpose, and what she exists to do, and those 3 pillars of pursuits, and how she actually can now go out into the world and live up to that ambition. So a pretty simple model, though it takes a lot of rigor to get to. Don't let its simplicity fool you.
Yeah, it takes a while to distill it down to something that can be that cleanly articulated, needless to say. So I think, kind of then moving towards more traditional brand communication, she wanted to kind of brand expression, a brand line, a tagline that she could use that kind of embodied all the things that we kind of helped to kind of define through the purpose. So we ended up with this expression here, which just bases an idea of never looking back. And that's had a double meaning, because as you'll see, that never look back means you're looking forward, you're progressing. You're not worrying about what made you the way you are, but you're embracing all of those experiences and using that, reframing that in a positive way. But as you probably noticed, the kind of USP for a product is these designs quite literally on the back of the leg. So what they're basically doing is they're bearing her soul if you like, or the expression of who she is as an image on the back of her leg. So it's about facing backwards and telling everyone else where she's been and what she's achieved or what she believes in, while she keeps moving forward. So that's kind of where that kind of expression came from, really, as a kind of campaign platform. Anyway, suffice it to say, what you're about to see now is then how that BBP has then driven everything from the product design through to the website, through to how she communicates, through even to the artists and the partners that she's brought on board to create that platform, that community of designers.
I just flipped through.
Yeah.
This is just pages from the website, but showing imagery is certainly not soft and passive or just strutting, but it has a sense of purpose and oomph, power in the imagery itself. And as Phil mentioned, with partnerships, because those back panels needed to be dynamic, we were creating a lot of different alliances with different artists. And what better way to get them on board than to have a purpose at your core? So Steve is one who does a lot of photography of women, and specifically through a very empowering lens with his Ladies Only Cruise and the Rockstar Women photos. So those through that collaboration, we incorporated some of his artwork directly into the fashion itself. And then we made sure that they linked back into specific causes. So she wasn't just interested in filling her own pocketbooks, but actually giving back. So any purchase of the products actually donated to Girls Who Code or She Should Run or Women for Women, depending on which product. And then you can see that same sort of dynamicism even within the e-commerce page. So one of the other lovely side effects of a great BBP is that you actually can go out into the world and talk about it in a very clear-minded way. So with Heather's now being armed with her BBP, she could go and be interviewed as she was for Vogue, etc. And she had that lighthouse in order to talk about her experiences and the role of the product in its purpose in the world. And that also helped her sell in her product within key retailers, because now it wasn't just a pair of leggings, but it stood for something more, which helped it differentiate itself on shelf and gave retailers a reason to buy. So that was a lot of Heidi.
No, that's great. And I think the other kind of story behind this is that that BBP, that single page, has driven her entire business. It drives her business model. It drives her product innovation. It helps her build the community. It informs her content strategy, her social media strategy, her retail strategy. And in keeping with what we were set up to do, we actually did that for nothing for her. That was a pro bono piece of work, just basically because we just believed so much in her product and her vision, and we thought, she was a very powerful, very determined young lady who really wanted to make a difference in the world. So
go online and buy her leggings.
So go and buy, exactly. Go online, buy her leggings. But just to go to show you that that one single piece of paper can have a pretty profound effect in terms of building someone's business, particularly as a startup who don't necessarily always have the resources to spend a lot of money on branding and communications. And here's just another example. Again, a startup based out in Colorado. I'm sure you guys are all very familiar with CBD as the counterpoint to kind of THC from cannabis. CBD, for those of you that don't know, is increasingly being used for medicinal reasons to help cure everything from cancer to PTSD. And it's nature's medicine, basically, but it's naturally sourced and naturally distilled and created from cannabis or hemp, because hemp is grown specifically to have more CBD than THC, which is the psychoactive stuff that gets you high, basically. So they're based out in Colorado, and they wanted to launch a retail brand. So this is how we did it. We started with the BBP, and I actually went out to spend a weekend with them in Colorado, talking to all the stakeholders in the business, talking to the founder, talking to some of the growers. What was really interesting is the founder of this business is an indigenous Native American from a very, very long lineage, where actually cannabis has been used for tens of thousands of years as medicine. So as well as being one of the world's leading ecologists, he's also effectively a shaman. I think.
A medicine man.
medicine man. So he had a very interesting perspective on the role of plants and how you use plants to create medicine. So this is really his belief, actually, and this is belief of his family going back for thousands of years and many generations, that actually all plants are sacred and their healing energy intimately connects us to each other and the natural world. They keep us healthy, and actually they teach us how to grow. We just don't listen. We're just not cognizant of it. So that's a very interesting, powerful belief built on many years of cultural insight and ancient wisdom, really. So based on that belief, then, the purpose for his business was to produce the highest quality, full spectrum CBD oil from cannabis to usher in a new, more enlightened age of medicine, restoring the intimate balance between earth, body, and spirit. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment, but that's really at the crux of bringing their brand to life. And their three pillars. So the product, what is their product? Well, actually, they're a research and development company. So what they actually do is they create and they engineer very potent strains or cultivars that yield much higher proportions of CBD. And then they license those cultivars out to other growers and other operations, basically. But the whole point is they want to produce the very best product because they know the very best product helps people that need it achieve the very best quality of life. So that's the product pillar. The platform, how they actually get out there, is really around education. So what they do is they run seminars and events and conferences all over the world where they educate modern doctors and healthcare professionals around the power of this very ancient medicine, around the power of CBD and cannabis, which then is a bit of is interesting because you're bringing the ancient spiritual world of indigenous culture and medicine, shaman, medicine man wisdom together right into the room with the very latest medical technology and science, which then creates a very interesting juxtaposition, which actually is the essence for how we've thought about building the brand. And then in terms of social impact, that third pillar is that because they do those two things, ultimately what they want to achieve in the world is provide actually unlimited access to the medicine, to the cultivars and their philosophy to promote health and well-being and prosperity, helping the people and communities that need it the most. And what's also interesting about that model is that hemp is also a fast-growing industry that can actually restore a lot of economic value back into kind of communities or farms areas where they've suffered and they've, the industrial revolution's come and gone, or they've just been spat out by the big supermarkets and mass production. So they've lost their economy effectively and they've lost their identity. So introducing hemp growing operations back into those communities can turn those communities around and suddenly deliver a huge amount of economic value. So the essence of all that meant that where we got to then was what was really interesting, we thought, was this kind of counterpoint between the world of modern medicine and science and this ancient world of wisdom and medicine and spirituality. And what we thought WASU could do is actually bring those two worlds together to create an entirely new perspective on medicine and health and well-being. The word WASU actually is the Lakota Indian Sioux word for sacred plant, which we thought was pretty cool. So as well as being distinctive, it also makes you ask, well, what does WASU mean? And where the hell did that come from? What's all that about, basically? So it's a stepping stone into educating consumers about the brand and where it's come from, and obviously the philosophy behind the brand as well. So that's where WASU came from, and I'll let Heidi talk about the identity, how the BBP inspired the identity too.
Yeah, sure. So obviously Phil got the name part. So there's you can read it clearly there. But you're seeing the balance between science and spirituality coming right through in that BBP. So it made sense for that balance to also work through the imagery and the icon for the brand as well. So you're seeing the oil itself at the top as well as the CBD oil coming off across the bottom. This yin and this yang, this constant balance of which the organization is committed to. And then the other thing is because of where this product was birthed in this specific part at the foot of the Grand Mesa in Colorado, there's a river that runs underneath too, and it actually mimics that S-like shape as well. So there's a nice little wink to the destination and the place, as well as this kind of constant balance. between the products and how the products are grown themselves, but also the end product that comes out and how it works within you as well. A little wink to the earth too, and the fact that it's just dimensional.
Yep, and everything's connected up in all in one place.
Yeah.
So that then led to a whole range, a whole portfolio of SKUs and products,
including pets.
From tinctures to salves to creams to oils to sprays to cigarettes, even to pet biscuits. I think is now the latest. And peanut butter. There you go. So a full range of CBD infused products. And then what we also did there is translate that then into their platform, their selling platform, which is an e-commerce platform. So you can buy Wasu now from wasu.us, or you can
Amazon.
you can even buy it on Amazon. We got it on Amazon about 4 weeks ago. I think, they just started selling on Amazon, which is cool.
You can buy it right now.
So you can buy it right now.
Pay attention until the end of class, then you can buy it.
Exactly. So another good example then of basically how we've used the BBP again to define a purpose, launch a brand, come up with an identity, and create a whole go-to-market strategy around how they're going to kind of bring that brand to life and then sell it.
Yep.
So that's it really, guys. Thanks for listening. We just wanted to kind of share that thinking with you, share this approach. We believe it's very powerful. It works with startups. It works with non-profits. It actually works equally as well with huge, big organizations. In fact, we're currently engaged now in a project working directly with the Office of Partnerships, the United Nations, to kind of use this model to invite bigger brands, bigger, well-established brands together to form, what's the word I'm looking for? Consortias around, coalitions, thank you, around purpose and how big brands and big businesses can better embrace their purpose to make meaningful impact in the world. So a very simple one-page tool, I think, we're hoping is going to have a massive impact in kind of changing the way that brands behave and how we all think about social impact. So thanks.
Jeff sent us our 8-minute warning.
Yeah, he did.
So I didn't know if we can do questions or not because of the sound issues.
Yeah, I'm not sure we can. I'm not sure anyone can hear us. But if there are questions and there's a way of relaying those questions, then in the last 6 minutes or so, we're very happy to answer them.
Can you turn on? Okay, can you hear us?
Hear you, Jeff.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you can hear us, we'll invite some people up to ask questions. But I've got the first question. When you went out to Colorado, did you imbibe in any of that medicine?
I couldn't possibly confirm or deny that, Jeff.
Let's just say there's a
Yes, I did. Of course I did. and actually, it's pretty awesome stuff. I mean, if you get the dosage right, it can help people suffering from severe anxiety or depression or seizures or cancer. A lot of people just take it every day in very small doses, microdosing, just to kind of even out and just kind of make you feel just really relaxed and really calm and hyper-focused. So, if you get the dosage right, it's actually very effective.
Okay, let's get some questions up here. Somebody come up and ask a question. I know they're all afraid to get up here in front of the crowd.
They're all stunned.
No, we can see them even when they're sitting down.
Okay, ask me the question. I'll relay.
I guess the question is, what's the biggest difference between like America or Europe?
What's the biggest difference between doing business in America and in Europe, since you're in London right now?
Oh,
that's interesting.
That's an interesting question. I suppose it's kind of at this level.
I would say
not a lot.
Not a lot. Well, I think for at least what we're trying to do from purpose, mission-based marketing, I would say at least from a UK perspective, they seem a bit ahead as I look back into the US. So that's been interesting for me, like seeing actually retail locations that have I'll say the cause as the banner, not like the store name. And then you can see more of that purpose marketing a bit more everywhere. And I felt like it was a little less obvious in the States. So that's been one key thing.
Mm-hmm.
The other big thing is just making it to meetings, because like you got to drive on the other side of the road. The lights have an extra yellow. There's all kinds of shenanigans.
All sorts of weird stuff. I think the main differences really come, to Heidi's point, really come down less about the kind of ambition and the purpose and the intent, because ultimately everyone realizes they've got to do the same thing. Otherwise, the world's quite literally going to implode around us. And, you know, across Europe and the UK as well, they're also realizing that brands and business have to take that responsibility. There's a new law that's going to come into play in the next couple of years over here in the UK, where businesses need to report on the triple bottom line, and that means they also need to report on their sustainability and their impact. And that's going to be an equal important part of their end of year annual report as their P&L, basically. So that's going to put a lot of pressure now on businesses, particularly here in the UK and, you know, probably ultimately more across Europe, to be more prove out their sustainability. I think it's probably fair to say that across Europe, particularly in Scandinavia,
but more.
Yeah, brands and businesses are far more advanced in thinking about, you know, sustainability and clean supply chain and product.
But then you go to Russia.
And basically how they show up. Yeah, Russia not so much, but certainly in the kind of more Western Nordic countries, Germany, North, basically. You'd be hard pressed to find businesses that don't have a very clear vision or purpose or social agenda at the core of how they operate and how they do business. So I would say enlightened's the wrong word, but I think they've just probably been around a little bit longer, and the climate that they operate in is more conducive to helping them deliver against that purpose.
I should point out that Heidi went to that little lesser school down the road. And so she is familiar with Michigan.
Shame.
Why don't you come up here? You can say this.
How's it going?
Hey.
So after your BPP plan is implemented and given to the business, what kind of support do you offer the business? Do you stay pretty involved, or is it kind of a hands-off type of deal?
Great question.
Yeah,
it is mixed. Sometimes that's it.
Yeah, like I think with Heather's scenario, it's more or less we gave her the pieces and now she's off and running.
Yeah.
Wasu, actually, we're way in the weeds.
Yeah, so Wasu, so again, so another model, and just to link back to our kind of proposition that we're there to help, we want to leave a lasting impact. So that means that we want our clients to win. If they can't afford to pay us, then we say, well, you don't have to. We'll just take some equity, or we'll take a commission of sales, for example, or we'll find a model that's going to help you succeed while enabling us to keep doing what we're doing. So in the case of Wasu, they had nothing. When they invited me over, they literally were growing plants in their cellar, in a house, in the middle of nowhere.
One last question.
Months later, they had a global retail brand. And so we've been very heavily involved in everything from production to packaging to building their e-commerce site to getting on Amazon. So it really does depend. It really does depend on the organization. But yes, we can pull it all the way through to kind of, you know, marketing, communications and PR and digital and social and activation and retail and merchandising and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, let's thank them for doing this.
Thanks, guys.
Phil and Heidi, thank you very much.
Thank you, my friend. Talk soon.
Have a great weekend.